All right, well, people at home, welcome. Everybody who's here, welcome. I've had the title slide up for a while, so I'm assuming you're in the right room. Everybody cool? All right. I'm just going to start off with the About Me slide. My name is Grant Fritchie. I work for Redgate Software, and I hate About Me slides. This is my contact information. If you want to get in touch with me after today, there it is. Scary DBA. That's a story. There is a story to it, but I can't tell it today. There's my X thing. There's my LinkedIn. There's my blog. And there's my direct email. If you have questions, I will try to help. If you send me some ridiculous 10,000-line query, you will get a response that involves money. But if you have a query, a question, I would love to help out. So please, please take advantage of this. I'll put this up again at the end. Everybody cool? All right. Now, as much as I hate About Me slides, I'm going to take this moment to tell a story. Back in 2005, and yes, I'm old, I was working with a development team, and oh boy, I should stand just a little bit further back. I was working with a development team, and we weren't going real fast. And the reason we weren't going real fast is because of the database. And one of the developers came up to me and said, hey, you know what? I know you've got a development background, and I think, oh, and by the way, I do. I came from development, and I told this earlier when half of you weren't here, but I became a DBA when I'm standing around, in a meeting, and everyone stepped back, and now I'm the new DBA. It was kind of a weird moment. But so anyway, I'm working in databases, I'm doing databases, and the guy says, I know you've got a development background. Hi. And I think that we can get the database into source code, and I think that we can automate the deployments of the database. Now, after I stopped laughing and calling him names, he sat me down and walked me through a whole bunch of stuff that he'd been researching and come up with and figured out. And sure enough, we did it. But here's the deal. We had to build everything. Well, okay, we didn't have to build source control. I mean, kind of wish we did because we were using Visual Source Safe. Good, at least one groan. Because, oh my God, what a horror show. But anyway, we had to build it all ourselves. We had to build everything. And it was a nightmare. We had to build the methodology for getting it in and out of source control. We had to build a methodology for getting it to the database. We then had to build the methodology to have a pipeline, and we didn't call it that because we didn't know we were supposed to. We built everything, but we got to the point where we could push button deploy database code with application code across all of our environments out into production. It was a painful, horrific process, but when we started it, I was supporting 3 development teams. When we finished it, I got a 4th, a 5th, and a 7th. And so yeah, I was supporting 7 different development teams because all of the time I used to spend testing scripts and validating scripts and making sure that I could deploy to dev, and that I could then deploy to QA, and then I could then deploy to financial testing, and then I could then deploy to pre-prod, and then I could then deploy to production. All that went away, and I was spending time building databases and writing code and performance tuning queries. And suddenly I was able to move and do a lot more stuff. And so that background, I hate About Me slides. God, I hate them. But this is why I'm standing up here talking about DevOps. You really can do this. And the reason I want to talk about it today is because you won't have to build all the tools. You can just go pick stuff up. And that makes a big, big difference. Now, the tool we're going to focus on today is Azure DevOps. So I am going to focus in on Azure. We're going to talk about Azure DevOps. The interesting thing is we're going to get to a slide here a little later that I'm not going to talk about it initially. I'm just going to let you see it, and then we're going to be going off and playing with code and all this other stuff. But this methodology that I'm going to talk about today can be applied pretty much across the board with whatever development tools you decide to use. So Azure DevOps is a great set of tools. I love them. I'm going to talk about them. By the way, there's another resource right there you may want to talk about afterwards. Aaron knows. There, right? Their business. I'm slow. I'm old. And I forget stuff. So you've got another resource right in the room. This is fantastic. But you know what? AWS Developer Tools is pretty good too. And Jenkins, if you're more of a Linux-based shop, Jenkins is sweet for within the Linux, if you're very focused in Linux and don't want to go cloud stuff. So Jenkins is there. Octopus, we were talking about that a little earlier before the session. Fantastic tool set too. So there are options here on these tool sets. But we're going to talk today about Azure DevOps. Everybody cool? All right. And I'm not asking questions for people at home because you can't interact. I'm sorry. All right. So I came up with my own definition of DevOps. It's an agile culture. It supports collaboration between people using automation and tooling to support a process. And then a smart person came up with a definition for DevOps. Yeah, it's way better. DevOps is the union of people, process, products to enable continuous delivery value to the end users. My God, that's clear and lovely. And so, yeah, I quote Donovan Brown now because it's better. Sorry, it's just better. But here's the deal. Let's focus just a little bit on it. And we're going to talk about DevOps as a level set. I know we're all nerds in here and we want to get all geeky. But I want to talk about DevOps first. So a couple of things about DevOps. First, DevOps is just a shorthand. It is not, well, if you're not on Linux, you can't do DevOps. As soon as someone starts trying to gate check the DevOps, they're evil. Get rid of them because they're not going to help you. DevOps is a shorthand for a union of people, process, and products. So you can deliver value to your end users. When we were kind of setting up, somebody said, oh, well, I've automated my database deployments, but God, it's a horror show. I'm like, well, is it automating successfully? Yes, cool, you're okay. I mean, you may want to try other ways and maybe smooth the process out, cool. But if you're able to get people, process, and products lined up and automated, who cares what we call it? Because DevOps has been getting something of a bad rep a lot lately. Well, if you're on a brownfield project, you can't do it. Well, actually, brownfield projects are easier for DevOps because we actually know what we're doing in the brownfield project. We're not figuring it out as we go. Greenfield projects, well, you can't do DevOps in a greenfield project. Well, no, you can still do DevOps on a greenfield project, but you are going to be spending more time, right? How do we want to incorporate this? How do we want to automate this? What can we do to, smooth the process out and get things better? So there's all of this stuff. The other thing that's going to come up a lot is who is responsible? Well, who is responsible? It's going to come up a lot. But the real thing is like, who is going to take charge of this? And the short answer is people. If you are a dev, you should be engaged with this. If you are a DBA, you should be engaged with this. If you're a storage manager, you should be engaged with this. If you're the cloud architect with the system, you should be engaged with this. If you're one of the business people responsible for working with the development team who's building your new project, you should be engaged with this. And management, I'm picking on you right there. The only one who admitted it. Who else is in management? Nobody's going to raise their hand now. Even my manager is smart enough not to raise her hand. So you're the only one. Even management needs to be engaged in this. So it is people first, then process. Now, today, I am not going to define a process. Do you need unit testing to do this? Need it? No. Will it be better? Oh, yeah. So testing automation is something you probably ought to be looking at. That's really important. Do you need to have a mechanism for getting between multiple different environments because there's different security settings on different environments? Yes. But do you have to have it? Well, no. There's things we can do to get around that and ignore it and suffer. But we can simplify this down to just a few steps, and that's what I'm going to focus on today. How many people are really, really, really today automating their database deployments? Okay, so there's what, 60, 70 of you? And that's probably 20? So 40 or 50 is going, dude, help us. Cool. So it's people first, then process, and then products. And I emphasize that because what we're not going to talk about today is people. I'm not going to talk about you need to have a champion up in management and you need a champion down in the trenches. And I'm not going to talk about how you develop and define champions, but you should. I'm not going to talk about the fact that everybody has to be involved and everybody has to be engaged. And hey, DBAs, I know the database has stored procedures in it and you wrote it and it's there and it's cool, but if it's not in source control, it doesn't exist. I don't care. Clapping. But we're going to get to that in a minute too. Everybody has to be involved. So we're not talking about that stuff that I just talked about. We're also not going to talk about process specifically. Do you have to have a QA server? I don't know, maybe. Well, do you have to have a financial testing server? Well, a lot of you are going like, a what? Okay, you probably don't need that. Do you need a load test server? Maybe. Do you need a performance test server? Which is different from a load test server? Maybe. Do you need a dev integration server? Maybe. Wait, what's a dev integration? I'm not talking about that. I'm not going to define a process for you today. We're just going to talk about a few steps, a very few steps, that I have tried my very, very best to make this as simple as possible. Because one reason only. If you can do what I'm going to show you today, you can build all the rest of that crap. All right? Everybody cool? Awesome. So we're going to talk products. So when we get to products, the products we're going to focus on a little bit is source control first. And then we're going to talk flow control because we're very focused on Azure DevOps. And then we're going to talk about magic tools. And the magic tools are the tools that get the code from source control and get it to a database. Now the 4 tools I'm going to focus on there, and there are several others, but I'm going to focus on 4 tools and talk about them. We've got a tool section that we'll get to. I'm going to talk about liquid-based DB-up Flyway and a little bit about SSDT. Now the reason I'm only saying a little bit about SSDT is for one reason and one reason only. Microsoft database tools or SQL Server database tools do one database, SQL Server. Now we kind of went around, a lot of you came in later, but we went around talking, who has this database, who has that database. So let me just ask again, who here has more than SQL Server under their belts right now? Doesn't matter which it is. And by the way, Synapse would count. Keep your hands up, please, because I need to eyeball. All right, so that's the majority of the audience, the vast majority of the audience. So if there's 70 people in here, it's probably about 60, 65 of you. Cool. That's why I'd emphasize it, because if you start to automate one of your databases, I guarantee one of the other teams is going to come up and go, ooh, that's pretty. And then you're going to go, yeah, but it's SQL Server only, so you're in Postgres, I can't help you. So I'm going to focus on liquid-based DB-up and Flyway because those tools are multi-platform. Everybody cool? All right. This is Azure DevOps. This is the welcome page on Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps includes boards, repos, pipelines, test plans, and artifacts. I really appreciate you guys coming today, and you have a good day. I hope the rest of past summit's good for you. Nobody's moving. You want more? Okay, cool. All right, fine. We'll do more. I'm going to focus down on these 3, repos, pipelines, and the magic tools. All right? Repos. What's a repository? Oh, wait, no, hang on. Bad presenter. So what is Azure DevOps? Well, Azure DevOps is a giant collection of tools. It's huge. There's so much stuff there. There's bug tracking. There's all kinds of different things. I'm not going to cover it all. There's a massive management system, including setting up security and reporting, so who can see what and who can do what. I'm not digging into all that stuff. But it's all there, so you can really, really, really do all kinds of fun stuff. It is, however, the first step on your security path, and I'm going to talk about security a bunch, because one of the scary bits of DevOps is that you are kind of basically telling Microsoft, here's my server, you have fun, enjoy life, I'll talk to you later. Let me know how things are going. So you do want to secure things. So we're going to talk about that a bit. Everybody cool? All right, that is one thing we will spend some time on. So repositories. Azure DevOps, out of the box, works directly and simply with Git, GitHub, and TFS. Don't use TFS. Just don't. There is one thing TFS does better than Git. One thing and one thing only. If you have a piece of code that says, if blah, 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 and then you put a return statement in there in the middle of it, Git will go, hey, new code. TFS will recognize that a return is space, and therefore continue reading and go, oh, it's the same code. That's it. Everything else about it is horror show. All right. When we talk about repositories, this is where we put our code. And we put our code in repositories because our databases are code. Who wants to have the argument? There's always somebody who wants to have that argument. Databases aren't code, man. There's this file system and there's a management system and there's data. Come on. There's data in there, and then you gotta have all that stuff and all the management system and SQL Server and Postgres and all that fun stuff. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. How do you create a table? Bingo, you write code. Although usually some wisecracker, I'm surprised it's not you, says, well, you right click on the database. It's like, yeah, there's always one. Today it was me. Cool. But anyway, your database is code because every single thing you're doing inside your databases and to your servers, in fact, is code-based, right? If it's PG SQL, cool. If it's, PL SQL, awesome. T SQL, cool. All of that stuff is code. So what should we do, developers? Yes, put it in source control. And who's back here screaming? Say it again.
Keep it on my own machine.
Keep it on your own machine where it works. Oh, don't worry, we'll get there. Okay, yeah, no worries. Cool. All right, let's keep an eye on the time. That's not a real timer. Oh, do I have a room proctor? Nobody even asked. Okay, cool. Oh, awesome. We'll figure it out. I'm here until I get tired. All right. Any questions on repos, on the general? We're going to do some demos and I kind of walk through it. But yeah.
You say TFS, did you really mean TFS?
They renamed it.
Yeah, because TFS with Git. So.
Oh, I'm old. Team Foundation Server. It's the old. Well, TFSST. Yeah.
TFSDC would be the subversion that was TFS originally used.
Don't do it. Git. Okay. Any other questions on source control? Other than the fact that I put up the wrong 4-letter combination? Cool. And thank you, by the way. I crack jokes, but I really appreciate feedback like that. Okay, cool. All right, pipelines. All right, pipelines are all about your process definition. Now I'm going to show you the stupidest, simplest pipeline I could come up with. And it's dumb, but it's functional. Can you make them insanely complex? Yes. Will you make them insanely complex? Oh, yes. Yes, you will. Gleefully, you will do it. But you want to be careful about it. Now, the whole idea of the pipeline, it's in the name. It controls the flow. It makes the call on what gets deployed, where, how, when, what's the triggering mechanism. Think about it like a valve or a pump, right? We kick on the pump and it starts to pump water and the water starts to flow through the pipe, which has leaks everywhere and sprays out. And we're all in trouble. Production's down. And, no, I'm kidding. But it controls the flow of the process that you're defining. That's what a pipeline is. Now, the pipelines we're talking about today is Azure DevOps. They work in the cloud, absolutely in the cloud, in Azure, but they also work on premises. You can set it up. I'm going to talk about that when we get to it. We're going to walk through some of that setup, and we're definitely going to focus on the security necessary to do that appropriately. But you can work in the cloud, and you can work on premises. And if you're feeling frisky, you can make Azure DevOps deploy to AWS. I've done it. It's fun. I expected ninjas to come through the window and kill me, but crossing the streams and all that fun stuff. But yeah, you really can. It's fun. So the pipelines are your next step for security, because this is where you're going to start to narrow down who can do what and what can be done. Now, again, this is a deep, deep topic. We could do 4 hours just on security, setting up inside this stuff easily. So we're not going there today because we have less than 75 minutes now. I've already been blathering. So we're not going to go there, but it is that. But now here's the bad news. I want you to learn yet another markup language. And no, there's always going to be one of those too. Oh, no, they've redefined YAML. It doesn't mean yet another markup language. It means YAML ain't markup. So my high school English teacher has a discussion she would like to have with you, because you can't define something using the same word twice. You can't say YAML is YAML. YAML is markup language. I don't care how much it upsets YAML fans. Pick it up. Learn it. Is there a GUI that you could use? Yep, I'm not going to show it. Because you're getting into automation, and you're getting into the mechanisms of control, and the best way to do that is outside of GUIs. Command line approaches are the right way to do automation. It's all about code. And YAML is your massive mechanism for getting in there and controlling it within Azure DevOps. It's also the way you control it within Octopus. It's also the way you control it within AWS developer tools. So picking up YAML is actually a good thing for your career, sadly, until they come up with yet another markup language. Which there's another one on the horizon. I've seen one that our teams have been using, and I'm going like, why are you doing this to me? Just use JSON or YAML or heck, XML. Yeah, I know. I'm going to badmouth XML here in a minute. Okay, any questions on the pipeline? Again, we're going to drill down into what Azure looks like and all that fun stuff. Okay? All right. So the magic tools. The magic tools, and I call it, it's not magic, but it's the one thing that you really do need. It is magic. It is the one thing you really have to have that's not a part of any of the existing tool sets, is you've got to bring in this thing that's able to understand what a database looks like, what a database is, what code for databases look like, and how that gets deployed. Now, there are two standard mechanisms for doing these kinds of tools. One is called state-based. And a state-based mechanism is, hey, you've got a database and you've got another database. Compare those two databases, identify the differences, generate a script that would make database A look like database B, or B looks like A. You get the idea. Generate that script, and then that script can be deployed to make those two databases look like cool. Now, it can, and also, obviously, I said database to database, but it can be database to source control, right? or database to backup, or database to whatever. But it's that compare mechanism, generate code sets, deploy that code set. Cool. That's one method. The other method that's very standard is what's called migrations. Migrations is a manifest of changes. Run these changes in this order. Create table, cool. Alter table, cool. Don't try to run the alter table before you run the create table. That causes problems. It's not there, you can't change it. Simple. Now, there's strengths and weaknesses to these two tool sets, these two approaches to the tools. Approach number one, state-based. The easiest to understand, the easiest to implement, and the most dangerous for your production servers. What? Because probably half the audience is using one of, there's at least 4 that I know of compare tools out there, and generating scripts all the time, and going like, yeah, this is great, what's the problem? How often have you had changes that would result in data loss? Now, SSDT is a state-based compare tool, state-based deployment tool. SQL Server database tools, for those who don't know, or it's also called Microsoft database tools. It is state-based. Now, it's pretty conservative. And what it says is, hey, if it looks like in this compare mechanism, I'm going to lose data, I'm just going to stop. I will not deploy. Unless you hit the override button right over there, in which case I'll deploy anything you want me to, any way you want me to. I'll go, man. It'll look beautiful. And then the database goes. But take the common example. I need to split a column into 2 new columns. Well, okay, fine, split the column, 2 new columns. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to add the 2 new columns that you need. You're going to migrate the data into those 2 new columns. You're going to validate that the migration worked, right? Lie to me. Cool, okay. And then you're going to drop that old column. And maybe you'll do it in 2 stages, like you'll set it all up and you'll wait a week or 2 weeks for the drop to occur to make sure everything's working. Smart idea. Okay, cool. State-based. What's it say? Well, there's 2 new columns. Oh, and you dropped a column. I'm going to drop that column and add 2 new columns. Here you go. You have a good day. Awesome. What happened to my data? What data? Yeah, backup. You better hope for a backup or a snapshot or something. So state-based has a weakness, and that weakness is the potential for data loss. And the fact that you can't control the migration scripts that get produced. I mean, you can, you produce them, and then you have to go in and edit them manually. Pain in the bottom. Cool. Strength is, it's easy, very simple. Weakness is, production's gone. A column is gone. Okay, I'm being over dramatic. Migrations. What's the strength? Well, I'm creating a script that's going to split these 2 columns. I'm going to create 2 new columns. I'm going to migrate the data. I'm going to validate the data migrated. And then I'm going to drop the other column. And I'm going to write that script out, and it's going to be exactly what I just said. And it's going to work, because it's going to work. And it's going to run that in order. Awesome. Cool. What's the weakness with migrations? All right, I don't know about your development teams, but my development teams usually work something like this. Hey, Grant, we're adding a new column to the table, so it's going to be a varchar 50. The name is Dinglefarb, and please just add that column in there. And okay, cool. Add that column in there. Grant, that column you added like 5 minutes ago, that is a waste of time. We're not doing the Dinglefarb thing anymore. Just drop that. Okay, drop. Hey, Grant, that Dinglefarb column, we really need it. Can you put that back in? Sure. Drop it. Add it. Drop it. Oh, it's a date time now. Add that. No, wait. It's back to the varchar. Yeah, okay. It's all good. It's going to go to production. Does that sound like anyone else's dev? And I'm not picking on developers. I assume that's how they work. It's a good thing. No, I'm not picking on them. No, I'm not being mean. They're experimenting. They're trying to understand the business. And the business is going like, I don't know, it looks like a date. I don't know. No, it's a string. Oh, wait, no. Because the business is insane, right? It's normal. But if you now have 15 add, drop scripts in your little deployment thing, and it goes to production on that 700 million row table, the deployment might take a day or two. That's okay. Nobody cares. Well, okay, once we get Bob's code from this morning, nobody cares, but until we get Bob's code from this morning, oh my God, everything's on fire. So you've got a problem with the migrations approach is that it can bleed into production. So it requires some discipline to use the migrations approach. But the migrations approach, while harder, because you are generating your code and you have to control how you generate that code, is safer. And so I advocate for it. Now, the three tools that we were going to talk about today, DBUp, Liquibase, and Flyway, all three are migrations-based approach. Well, okay, here's another story that we have to cover. Liquibase is a great tool. I'm not throwing rocks at Liquibase. It is a functional, good tool. Oh, and all three of these tools are open source. The problem with Liquibase is twofold. One, XML. XML, wait, I'm doing databases. Yeah, you put your SQL code into XML. What? I mean, I'm feeling dirty saying it. Yes, I should. But that's how it works. It is XML driven, and you put your SQL code into the XML. Okay, that may or may not be a game changer for you. I find it appalling, but you might not. That's cool. The one thing I do have a problem with it, and this is not a problem with Liquibase, this is just one little bit of understanding that you need to know. So if you're going to pursue Liquibase, if you go out and test all three tools, you decide you want to go with Liquibase, that's great. Know this though. The Hello World example of Liquibase is state-based methodology. So if you follow Hello World, you're going down what I call, and you might not agree, and if you don't agree, that's okay, but what I call the more dangerous path. So make sure if you go with Liquibase that you find the code and the examples that show you how to do it with the migrations approach. You will thank me later, I think. Everybody cool with that? DBUp is migration straight up, and it uses this really funky language called SQL. Flyway is migrations approach, and it uses the same weird language SQL. No XML needed. They use SQL. Everybody cool with that? So those are our three magic tools. Yes? There's Liquibase, DBUp, and Flyway. So DBUp. Cool. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. So where can we deploy all this stuff to? Name it. These tools all support 15, 20 different database systems. So you want to go to Azure SQL Database? Great. You're going to SQL Server? Awesome. You're going to Mariah? Why? But cool. Postgres? Whatever. Oracle VMs? Yes. Cosmos DB? Yes. Snowflake? Yes. Depending. DBUp doesn't support quite as many as Liquibase and Flyway does. But AWS, Google Cloud. Anybody using Google Cloud? 1, 2, 3. At home? Oh, no, I'm not throwing rocks. I'm not throwing rocks. 3, okay, 3, cool. Just curious. There's a little bit of traction there, I think, feels like. All right, any questions on deployment targets? All right, cool. So this is the picture I promised. I'm not going to talk about it. We're going to get to it. I'm going to come back and explain it. But this is where we're trying to get to. This is our holy grail. All right? We're going to pursue this. Everybody ready? All right, let's get going. There we go. Hang on. Let me get my glasses because I'm a blind old man. All right, so this is Azure DevOps. Let me start in Azure DevOps itself. These are a series, these are all test demo projects. I think most of them are public and open. don't get into them. They're junk for the most part. Although the one we're going to cover today is Ham Shack Azure. It's real careful. Yeah, I know, I'm a nerd. Leave me alone. Ham Shack is because I'm a ham radio operator. And KC1, KCE. KC1, KCE. Kilo Charlie 1, Kilo Charlie Echo. CQ. Oh my God, and I'm all alone. All right. Anyway, I'll shut up. All right, cool. Hopefully someone at home was actually calling back their call sign. I've got faith in you. All right. So this is my organizational setup, right? My organization. Now, inside my organization, I get to set up users. So this is how we begin the process. Now, how many users do I have? Me. But we can set up multiple users. We can set up multiple paths through this stuff. You can set up policies and determine who can do what, and you can set up permissions to control who can get into this. This is a deep well because you can get very granular, and you probably will want to. Now, I'm not going to pursue all of it, but this is where you get going on that. Now, the next thing I want to show you in the organizational setup is the thing that you will want to get going fairly early on. What the? That doesn't look right. Huh. Oh no, I cleaned up the other day. I'm old. So these are my agent pools. Now, agent pools are how you control the pipelines and how you determine what those pipelines can do. Now, I've got 2 agent pools here, just 2, because I'm showing the 2 kinds of agent pools that you can have. My default pool is running in one location, right there. It's on my laptop, and it works. Works on my machine. Okay, that's a bad joke. You got to give me that one. That was bad. I apologize. Everyone at home, I apologize. It's a bad joke. All right, but it's running on my machine. So that one is running locally, and then this one is running in Azure. Now, I've set them up real simple. Again, I'm focusing on simplicity because who feels like they're already a little overwhelmed with the number of things I've talked about? Between source control pipelines, the magic tool, and then setting up security and setting up agents and then setting up pipelines. And yeah, 1, 2, 3. Okay, everybody else is keeping up just fine. Cool. It's just Andy back here. All right. Everybody cool with what we've got so far? Everybody all right? Any questions? All right. Now, with that done, I'm going to go in here and this is my project. Now I just want to look over here. I don't want to get into it. Come on, there we go. You can set up dashboards for displaying how you manage mechanisms within the system. You can set up a wiki describing your DevOps methodologies, your deployment methodologies, and your management methodologies. You can set up dashboards. You can set up boards that control how things go. You've got a repository, which we'll look at here in a minute. You've got pipelines you can set up. You can set up test plans, and you can set up artifacts and control the way artifacts are moving. And there's more to it even than this. But again, we're focusing down on 2 areas here, repos and pipelines. Everybody okay? Mainly because I want to focus in on the bare minimum. Now inside here, here's my YAML file, and we're going to get to the YAML file in a minute. And inside that is a folder. And inside the folder, there is some stuff set up for Flyway. And yes, I'm demoing Flyway just because I'm lazy. But this is the open source mechanism of Flyway. All right, everybody cool? Inside there is this thing called migrations. And inside the migrations, anybody recognize that? YAML. Okay, first, get your eyes checked. Second, go to the psychiatrist. Yeah, this is SQL, T-SQL, in fact. And all of these are SQL. And a lot of them, you can see the names on them, new Taggle, whatever, in Manchester. A taggle, I don't know what that, table, oh, I was typing table. Never type in demos, it's always a bad idea. And a table for Birmingham, and a table for another new table, a cleanup for Reading. Yes, in fact, I did this presentation all over England, 5 cities in 5 days. And then, obviously I've got number 1 is me setting things up, and then out here. Now there is a trick. This is used both by DBUp and by Flyway. There's a file name standard, and the file name standard is the version that you want. And so it's V, any set of numbers. What I'm doing, and this is not like some perfect practice, but it does make things kind of easy to manage, is I'm giving it a number and I'm putting a date in too as a number. And this is both DBUp and Flyway work like this. Then there's 2 underscores and then a description. 2 underscores, yeah, it's a weird little thing, but there's 2 underscores and then you've got the description, and that's how it works. So it's how it keeps the migration scripts in order. Everybody cool with that? All right. And they do kind of have to be unique, and they have to be in the right order, because it's all about that manifest of changes. Okay, so that's my repo. Now, my pipeline is here, and we're not going to dig into it yet. Instead, we're going to roll back over here to Management Studio. And we're going to type in a demo. And I'm keeping it real simple. Seattle, no. Past Summit 2023, ID, int, and there we go. Oh, hang on, we'll make it even better. Look at that. I just used ORM. Oh, yeah, God, yeah. Hang on. Thank you. That's a bad name. There we go. Cool. So I've created a table in my database. I am, of course, joking. But I'm now going to save this table. I'm going to save it out to a local folder on my machine, right? This is everything we're doing right now is, well, okay, not everything. The database I deploy to is a development database up in Azure. But everything I'm doing is local. Everybody okay with that? Right? I want to be really careful about describing what I'm doing, because I want it to be clear. So locally, I'm now going to store this file. What I'm going to do is I like to cheat, see what file I've got. V015_2023, and it's 0358 __ summit. Yeah, that's, oh, yeah. I don't like you. 11:15, there we go. Hey, come on, be nice. All right. So that table has been created locally. Now, there's no plugin for working with a lot of these tools. There's nothing in Management Studio. So I'm going to go back over here to Visual Studio. Could I use other stuff to do it? Absolutely. I could use other tools. There's nothing saying I have to do this. But what I'm going to do is think about it like this. I'm working today. I created a new table. Pretty happy with it. I'm going to go to my source control, my local, on my laptop, on your machine, my machine. On my machine, I'm going to save this file. All right, I've saved it. Now on my machine, I'm going to stage it. And what's that mean? Well, it means that I've done my work. I've got it ready to put into Git. Now, maybe I've got other work to do. I'm going to go do that other work. And then I'm going to stage that other work. And then when I've got it all ready, locally in Git, I'm going to type a very meaningful message describing exactly the set of changes that I'm making, maybe tying them back to Jira or something, I don't know. And then I'm going to commit it locally. And here's the first cool thing. Monday, when I'm still trying to recover from past Summit, and I don't remember what code I did, I can go into here and look at my code commit because I've committed it locally. And if I want to go like, oh God, I must have really done something the night before I've typed that code, I can roll it back locally before I've ever done anything to put it up into the cloud and all the rest of my stuff. Git, by design, works in 2 stages. So you can work locally and make versions locally, which is great, and then put that stuff up in the cloud. Cool. Let's put it up in the cloud. What? Oh. There we go. Okay, cool. That stuff's up in the cloud. Now let's go validate that it's up in the cloud. First, we're going to go over here to our repos. We're going to take a look at Azure DevOps. We're going to take a look at migrations. Hey, there it is, Summit, just now. There's our create table statement. Awesome. That's it. Now, in the meantime, over here, the pipeline should fire. Should have fired already. That's weird. Uh-oh. And I just tested it this morning. Don't do this to me. If I have to, I'll run it manually. But, well, here, it's time anyway. Let's go in here and take a look at the pipeline, and let's edit the pipeline. Now, the pipeline, it's YAML. Now, I left this in because there's a whole bunch of ways you can do pipelines. This pipeline is a PowerShell pipeline. And the reason I chose PowerShell is really simple. If I show you stuff that I can do in PowerShell, it means I can do it anywhere, I can do anything at all. I can take control of anything. I can start talking about spinning up environments. I can talk about the changes I can make. I can talk about the fact that I can do multi-stage deployments. I can incorporate additional mechanisms, data moves, all the rest of all the complexity that you want to add in. Yeah! Okay, but we're going to keep it really simple today. And I'm starting off with a simple, minimal pipeline. Now, when we define it, mine has to be updated to the main branch of the code. As soon as that trigger fires, the main branch of the code gets updated, this pipeline should start. Okay? That's the basic mechanism. Now, the pool, what's the pool? Well, it's using those pools that we defined earlier. Remember we defined the pools earlier? Okay, so it's now going to the pool, and in the pool, it's firing up a VM image. And I'm firing up Ubuntu. Now, what else could you fire up on an Azure system? Windows, yeah, or Red Hat. I think they may even have another one. I do Ubuntu because I'm comfortable in Ubuntu. That's the only reason I picked that one. Although Windows is a little slower. Ubuntu is a little quicker, just so you know. But then it's doing steps. Ooh, steps. What can we do in our steps? Well, I'm going to run PowerShell. Now, another thing I'm doing is I'm running Docker. Now, why am I running Docker? And you're going like, what is Docker? Why are you introducing another tool? Well, because I'm spinning up a VM. What's on that VM? Have I installed anything on the Azure VM? Can I install anything on Microsoft's Azure VM? No, not really. I mean, I can create a VM, I can create a set of VMs and then control those and do all kinds of fun stuff. But if I just want to spin up Microsoft stuff, then I would then have to install my software. I'm not installing crap. I'm just going to run Docker because I can pull the container for Flyway. Cool. So I'm running a Flyway container. And so I do have to do a little configuration trick for Flyway to tell it where my files are located for my VM. No big deal. It's a normal thing. And then I run a command called, really tricky command called migrate. What's migrate do? It runs my deployment. Oh yeah, and this is my password for my database. You're welcome. It's also the password for my bank account if you guys want to go. And the laptop, everything. It's all one password. What's that? Yeah. Who do I bank with? None of your business. Plus, that's not that's my demo password. I use it everywhere. So yeah, if you want to hack my demo machines, you now have the password for hacking my demo stuff. Have fun. Okay, cool. So that's what that's doing. So in fact, let's just go check this again. Oh, there it goes. Okay, it's just running really slow. Wow, that's weird. Microsoft, come on, where are they? All right, so what's happening in here right now? Well, we can go in and take a look. We can see it as it's occurring. So it initialized the job. Cool. So what did it do? Well, we've got the job name. It's going out to find an agent machine. It's creating the image there for that. It's checking through a bunch of stuff that we don't really care about. It's then pulling my code out of my source control system. It's going into Git and pulling the code. It then goes and runs my command for Flyway, and there it is. It's pulling out a Docker container. And once the Docker container finishes, it deploys my database code. So cool, it deployed everything. It does a post-checkout job, and then it cleans up. And so we've got all of this stuff, and it all ran, and yay, we win. All right? Did it deploy for real? Well, let's go take a look. Over here, same server. I've got my actual database, Ham Shack Radio. Open that up, open up the tables. Oh, guys, stop tweeting. You're slowing down the internet. Past Summit 2023. The crowd goes wild. He moved a database from one server to another. It's a miracle. No, it's not. It's not. But it's the bare minimum to get you started. So let's go back to our picture for a minute. So what's in my picture? Well, in the thing, I think I was supposed to use ADS. I used SSMS. Sue me. Azure Data Studio, right? Write some code. Azure Data Studio. Once you've got your code written, put your code into source control, Git. Once it's in source control, send it to the pipeline, Azure DevOps. The pipeline calls my magic tool, in this case Flyway, which deploys it to my managed database. These 5 steps are as tiny and as simple as I can make this process. Now, I get a lot of people start to get really concerned. It's like, well, wait a minute. I've got to have unit testing in here. I have to be able to deal with the fact that there's different security in dev than there is in QA, than there is in pre-prod, than there is in prod. I've got to have a mechanism for running data movement as well as doing this actual deployment. How the heck do you do all that? Same way. It's just more steps. It's just more code. It's just more work. Oh, did I tell you you were getting less work at any point? Oh, no. Oh, no, 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 no. I'm putting lots of work on your shoulders right now. But this is the bare minimum. If you can't do this, you can't add in the unit tests, and you can't add in the variability across all your environments, and you can't do all the extra testing. You've got to have this bare minimum. This is the bare minimum. Now, does it have to be Azure Data Studio? Well, we already saw it doesn't have to be Azure Data Studio. We use Management Studio. Does it have to be Git? No. You can go use Subversion. Enjoy your life. There's groans coming from all over the place. For people at home, there's groaning going on. Heck, if you really want to, you can still use Visual Source Safe. Okay, no one ran out of the room screaming. Cool, that's good. You don't have to use Git. You can use GitLab. You can use GitHub. You can use, AWS Developer Tools has a Oh, crud, it just went out of my brain. Well, anyway, they've got another thing. You know what it is under the covers, of course. Git. Cool. Yeah, so they've got their own thing that's Git. Do you have to use Azure DevOps pipelines? Nope. We talked earlier about Jenkins. We talked earlier about, oh, you are my room proctor. Oh, okay, you're just nosy. Teasing. You know I'm teasing. We go way back. I'm not picking on some stranger. All right. Yeah, at least 15, yeah. So do you have to use Azure DevOps Pipeline? No, we already talked about it. Jenkins, all the other tools. Do you have to use Flyway? No, we already talked about that. You can use DBUp. You can use Liquidbase. If you're on SQL Server only, you can use SSDT. Do you have to go to Azure SQL Database? No, we talked about that too. You can substitute any of this stuff. But if you can't do these 5 steps, you can't do this. It's just as simple as I can make it. Now, obviously, step 1 is simple. You already know how to write SQL. Cool. So your next step is you've got to learn how Git works. You've got to pick up Git. You figure that out. It's not hard. And in fact, you're going to grow to love it because it adds protection. It gives you an undo inside of your database. I mean, and who can, other than the one lady who screamed out backup, and awesome, how can you undo stuff in a database? Well, you can't. Once X committed, it's gone. What code did we have yesterday? I don't remember. It was yesterday. I went to the bar last night. So Git gives us all kinds of cool stuff. Once you can get it into the pipeline, then you control the pipeline. Do you have to use Docker? No. When I run the stuff locally, I've got everything installed. So I don't have to run Docker. I just call commands to Flyway or DBUp or Liquidbase. And I've used all 3 doing this exact thing. So you can substitute all the things that you need to, and then you determine your deployment target. But you've got to hit these. This is as simple as I can make it. This is the most basic I can make it. And I don't know any other way to describe it. Because what I want for the people who are not, and it was like a good 20 of you are already doing database deployment, and maybe you're regretting your choice on sessions today. I'm sorry. But the other 50 people in here who are not yet doing it, this is your goal. Because after this is when you get to add all of that glorious complexity. And you will want to do all the glorious complexity. Okay? Everybody cool with that? Yes, go ahead. Oh, is there any other way to use Flyway other than a user password? Yeah, and same thing with DBUp and Liquidbase. Yes, you can. Again, I'm lazy. Maybe my demo code probably should show more sophisticated mechanisms for security and stuff. But, oh golly, speaking of security, I completely skipped a step. Whew. Thank you for asking the question. Thank you. Hang on. I completely forgot one thing that I really wanted to show you. Oh, hang on. I need glasses so I can see. This, see this? That's the basic setup. The basic setup for security and authorization and authentication inside of Azure DevOps pipelines. And the way it can work is it can work with SSH. It can work with Git credentials. It can work with REST APIs, PATs, user access tokens. You've got all of these mechanisms that you can start to set up. And this is how you can make sure that while you're letting Azure connect down to your local machine, you're only letting the Azure pipeline connect down to your local machine. And then on your local machine, you're going to set security up so that this thing can only, say, for example, connect to one Postgres database server. And on that Postgres database server, it only has the ability to alter tables or create tables or whatever it is you decide is the minimum mechanism that you need to be able to do your deployments. That is the path you're going to follow. I'm not, like I said, this is the reason I showed you, I hate it when people go like, oh, here, let me show you stuff on my blog. But I wanted to show you Microsoft's security paper so you can see how they've got this set up. And it's deep, and it's deep, it's wide, there's all kinds of mechanisms. I'm so glad you asked that question, because I almost forgot to put this in here. Well, no, actually, I did forget, but you reminded me. So this is a really good question. You've got a lot of choices on this and a lot of choices on policy management. It is going to get hairy. You'll probably want to bring in somebody who's done it before to help out. Although, while you're learning and you're going to do some really sample system stuff, you can do what I did and do a username and a password and really simple security. You can. Hang on, one right back there. If you've got all Azure SQL DB, can you skip Flyway? No. How do you get the T-SQL code out of Git onto Azure SQL DB? Okay. Can you use SSDT? Yeah, sure. You don't. Again, I want to emphasize, Flyway is not the be-all, end-all. It's not the only thing you can use. You can use SSDT if you're doing SQL Server only, and if you're doing Azure SQL Database, you're doing SQL Server only. If you're doing just Microsoft SQL Server, SSDT will work, or DBUp, or Liquibase, or Flyway. You can do any of them. Once you move out of just SQL Server, you can no longer use SSDT. And so I demo this because you remember 90% of the audience has multiple databases. So I demo the multi-database methodology because lots of people have multiple databases. If you're lucky and only got one, walk away a winner. And then over here there was a question. Yes? It's built into Azure DevOps. I don't actually have to pay an additional Azure fee for it. However, there is methodologies and charges. Aaron's up here going, "You don't say it's free." As soon as you start getting into more complex stuff, and you want to do a private, you notice I said earlier, mine are all public. You want to do private Azure DevOps pipeline, there are charges. After so many hours. Yeah. My stuff is so minimal and so bleh that I don't worry about it. I make it public. If you want to hack in there, go for it. I don't care. Everybody cool? All right, hang on. Boy, I'm glad I remembered the security thing. See, I told you I'd do it. All right, so hopefully today what we covered is integrating DevOps into Azure. Right? We talked about the idea of Azure DevOps pipeline. We talked about the idea of Azure SQL Database. And we also talked about the idea of what DevOps is and the importance of DevOps. And we used English is hard. We used Donovan Brown's quote because Donovan Brown is very, very smart. I've never had the opportunity to meet him, and I just found out he retired. Doggone it. But anyway, great person, really good. We've covered a bunch of tools. And I know those of you who've never done this before are going like, this is stupid. I'm never going to do DevOps. But you should. You should. The benefits after you spend some time learning all these tools are hard to weigh. They are so big. It really does make things better. And so hopefully we talked about this and got those processes in place so you guys can do it. I'm putting this one back up because I've got a few more minutes available for questions. I always like to reserve a little bit of question time. We got about 10 minutes. So what did I get wrong? Go right there.
Are you building your migration steps to be idempotent, or is there something managing?
Oh, good question. Oh, here, hang on. Let's step back and show you. I think all three tools, all three of the multi-platform tools, SSDT is state-based, so it doesn't count. I think all three of the tools do this, or a methodology of this. Here, let me just show you. There it is. Like somewhere in here there is it creates a Flyway schema history table. and it keeps a track of, I don't need to show columns. It keeps track of what's been deployed. What we can do is actually run a query against it real quick. Never type in demos. I like typing in demos because when someone asks a question, we can show them something interesting, right? Oops. Flyway schema history, there we go. Yes, I did demo just very tiny slightly another Redgate product, but that doesn't count. Shh, I didn't say it. So you can see it's recorded what's gotten deployed. Now, the other part of your question is, are my migration scripts idempotent? Yes. However, you can put variables inside them and do some other controls. So, no, I can't get into that. Done. That's yes. Plus the ability to put in variables. And then I didn't say anything else. I thought a bunch of things. Go ahead. Cool question. I heard messed up. Okay, yeah. Oh, cool. So the question is can you do rollbacks with this? And answer is yes. What's that? But there's a star. Yeah, you can. But it depends on which tool you're using. Flyway, for example, doesn't support rollback with a star. Liquibase does support rollback with a star. DBUp does support rollback with a star. So you can do rollbacks. The one thing I would say about rollbacks is don't. And I know some of you are boss says I have to, so I have to. Okay, cool. Make sure that when you create your really, really complex pipeline, that you include a rollback test. Why would I say that? Because you should never run a script for the first time on production. Did your rollback work? Maybe. But also, the reason I'm against rollbacks is real simple. Most of the time, you either get an immediate problem, or the problem occurs 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks from now, somebody calls up and says, hey, Grant, the data is weird in the production server, and you do some investigation and you realize the deployment 3 weeks ago caused a problem, and now we need to roll back and throw away 3 weeks worth of data. Nobody cares, it's all cool. What? No, you're not going to roll that back. At that point, you're going to do what we call roll forwards, because to fix the problem, you're going to do new deployments. So I'm against rollbacks, but if you have to do them, I understand. Make sure you include a test for the rollback. Cool? Awesome. And there was a, yes?
You just decide right away, I'm going to do a migration with the statements for, 50 units.
Right, yeah.
So your initial migration was set is going to be 15 scripts with B001, and the date time you decided to do so?
No, the good news is, all the tools have a mechanism called baselining. And so you can establish a baseline in a brownfield project and say, this is, day one, don't touch it. And then everything you change from that point forward will be, all your migration scripts.
Sorry, I'm ticket stacking.
Okay.
So in the concept of Git, there's like the idea of squashing the bits so that you kind of flatten out so you can change.
Okay, cool. Do the migration systems have a similar method to Git that allows you to squash your commits so that you're not looking at, moving development into production? No. And yes. It's an asterisk. So Liquibase is open source. DBUp is open source. Flyway is open source. like Postgres, which is open source. There are paid versions. So there's paid versions of Flyway, there's paid versions of Liquibase, and they do more. That's the simplest way to do it without getting into weird sales pitches, okay? Everybody cool with that? All right, you're done. No more ticket stacking. No, you can ask more questions later. Somebody else gets a turn. There was another hand. No? Chickened out. Okay, over here. Sorry.
How does that work with environments and deploying jobs? Creating scripts that create the job and saving it on that way and having it like that?
You cheated. You asked 2 questions in 1. All right. So how does it work with jobs? Do you create a script to create the job or alter the job? He's already answering for you. Yeah. Create a script for that. I mean, SQL, if you're doing SQL agent, that's code. Write the code, put that in source control, manage it the same way. It's not a database, so you will have to kind of like do some dancing, because Liquibase, DBUp, and Flyway, and SSDT are all pretty database focused. But can you do it? Yep, absolutely, 100% you can. And then your second question was, how do you deal with environments? All right, so there's a whole big discussion around environments. Laughing. Big discussion around environments, because let's say you're doing SSDT. Oh, they left. Oh, well. Let's say you're doing SSDT. SSDT doesn't like environments. It does not care for them at all. So what we had to do when we were using the precursor to SSDT called Data Dude, yes, that was the official name. We had to create a pre-deployment script that would tear down things, run the deployment, and then run a post-deployment script that would rebuild things, because of the state-based mechanism that didn't like the fact that we had different logins and different permissions and all that kind of fun stuff. So you had to go through that. A migrations approach, DBUp, Flyway, and Liquibase, they've got mechanisms built in so you can do some escaping and variable mechanisms that are going to allow you to do that. But even those, you may still need to do a little bit of extra couple of steps in your pipeline to deal with some cross-environment mechanisms. A nice thing about Azure DevOps, it understands what environments are, and you can go in there and define, this is my QA environment, this is my dev environment, and make changes and then feed that into the code as you go. I don't show it, I'm sure you did. I don't show it, 1, because it's a short session, and 2, I'm trying to keep it stupid simple at the start. So yeah, that's how you deal with environments.
Can I balance that for a variable? Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Can I balance that for a variable for each one of the environments? You have that, and this next string in a variable within Azure.
You would put it within the pipeline and define it, and then it would get fed in from the pipeline itself. Yes, that's how you would do it. Yeah. And back there. SSDT is absolutely 100% state-based. The other 3 open source are migrations. Yeah. And there's actually 1 tool in the world that's hybrid. I can't say. But I might be really closely associated with the organization that makes it. I didn't say it. It's on recording. Yes? Okay.
But do you ever keep a single source of truth for the definition so that I'm stand up in a database?
Oh, I forgot one other. That's a great question. I'm not going to repeat the question because I'm just going to blurt the answer in this case. So one other weakness to migrations I forgot to mention is that migrations tracks a set of changes. Okay, what did the table look like a week ago? Table? What's a table? I've got a stack of migration scripts. Oh. So her question, now I'll repeat it, was how do you deal with the fact that you don't have the change management stuff of the actual structures? Well, that's something that state-based does well, but migrations does poorly. Now, Liquibase has a mechanism inside of it where you can do exactly what you talked about, which is create a snapshot of it. The other tools, I'm not aware DBUp has it, and Flyway, asterisk, right? Fair enough? Okay, cool. That help?
I mean, yeah, it
I didn't say it depends. I gave you a real answer. Right. Yes. Oh. Yes. Yeah. I'm not repeating all that right now because I'm actually at the end of my time. So I apologize for not repeating it. But thank you so much for coming. Again, this is my contact information. I didn't put an outgoing message. I like you guys. You're awesome. Thank you for coming. Please, if you need to get in touch.